The path toward equal rights for all has hardly followed the straight line, and there have been many setbacks along the way, not the least of which was Donald Trump's Electoral College victory and the 5-4 majority Republican Supreme Court recently eviscerated the Voting Rights Act, unleashing a slew of voter suppression efforts that tried to keep minorities and young people from exercising their constitutional right to vote. But in Alabama, at least on one day, we overcame. Overwhelmingly odds, much of the credit goes to the people of Selma, Montgomery, and the rest of Alabama's Black Belt, as well as to whites in the state, both Republicans and Democrats, whose decency couldn't bear the thought of a Bible-thumping white child molester representing them, the state, and the U.S. Senate in being a symbol of Alabama for the world. Good morning. I'm Ed James, along with political analyst Dr. Lawrence Miller, and this is Black Almanac. Dr. Miller, thanks for coming back. After that last go-around, I wasn't sure that you'd come back.
It's something. A lot of things have been happening since the last time I was on your show.
Oh, yeah, a lot of things. But let's talk about our children first.
Yes.
And maybe we'll talk loud enough and Congress will hear it, and they'll do something about authorizing the money for CHIP.
Yes, the Child Health Insurance Program.
Mm-hmm. How do you just say that?
Use it as a bargaining chip. Use it as a bargaining chip. You put this tax cut, tax reform, whatever you want to call the charade that they're working on.
Theft for the oligarchs.
For the oligarchs, for the plutocracy,
yes,
the kleptocracy. They are holding back this CHIP program, which affects millions of young people. Mm-hmm. Now, here it is. We're talking about, as I mentioned before, this tax program that they've been working on that will automatically end the individual mandate of the Affordable Care Act. Mm-hmm. So they're getting a double whammy going on here, because the states have picked up the money to, supplement what the federal government should be paying as far as the CHIP program is concerned, and they're running out of money. So now here it is. They've been dragging their feet in terms of Congress is concerned, and the states are saying we can't backstop this anymore. You have to pass this law.
And it's your duty.
Exactly.
And Orrin Hatch, Utah.
Yes.
He was one of the original founders of the CHIP program.
Right.
And they got 20,000 children in Utah who would be off the program if they hadn't done a temporary extension on December 8th.
Right.
Now, why is it that we always have to do extensions, temporary?
Why can't they just do their jobs?
Do their jobs.
They get enough time off.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely they get enough time off. And then Hatch, on the other hand, went crazy and trying to say that some people are just lazy and they don't know what to do with what they have.
Right. That seems like a running theme with the Republicans in Congress. Yeah, yeah, because we mentioned this last week about the fact that Grassley talked about people spend their money on booze, women, and movies.
Movies.
You know, the real contributors to the society, investors, they should get the real tax break. It's indicative of, you just got to mentioning, of this theory of trickling down from these wealthy people to stimulate the economy. And the funny thing is that, you know, we talk about the CHIP program. One of the first things that the senator-elect from Alabama talked about when at his the night of his victory was, go ahead, don't wait for me.
Yeah.
Deal with this CHIP program. Deal with going ahead and passing this. This should be your first order of business in terms of taking care of our children. But
they're trying to just cobble anything together. Doesn't matter who it doesn't help,
exactly,
as long as it takes care of those at the top.
And that gets back to that old theme of trickle down. Take care of the people at the top, and the money will trickle down to the bottom. You know, and it's surprising that, you know, that people buy into that. You know, we talked about 8 years ago the Bush tax cuts, and that if you got rid of the Republicans thought about if you got rid of the Bush tax cuts, that the economy would fall into the toilet. What happened? The Bush tax cuts were curtailed. The economy took off. The unemployment went down. When Obama left office, it was in the 4s, right?
Yeah.
Now it's at the bottom of the 4s. This is the Obama economy that Trump inherited. It's not his, that he started off with in terms of what happened as far as this economy is concerned. He's just getting around to the different things that he would like to see done. And with this tax cut, we know that as far as paying for it is concerned, it's going to bring over $1 trillion to the deficit. So where are these people going to cut if they go ahead? And you got cutting taxes, you have to deal with the budget as it relates to the deficit. If you're going to go ahead and start talking about giving money back, you got to pay the piper at some point.
Oh yeah, we thought that when General Kelly came on board, things were going to be a little different.
Right.
Well, things are a little different.
That's for sure. Yeah. We thought that he was going to be someone who would bring some common sense and order and
stability
to the White House, but it's just as crazy as ever.
And this past Tuesday, Omarosa Manigault,
yes,
co-star of Donald Trump's
apprentice
program, at the direction of General Kelly, scooped her up,
yes,
and
showed her the door.
Now that's interesting.
Yes.
You know, every so often, and I always tell folk, and I tell young folk this too, because being young, you're excited and you haven't experienced anything, and you see everything going to be great.
Yes.
And I remind them that when you're black or brown, your name is in the book.
Yes.
And it's not the good book that we learn about in church.
Right.
It's the black book. And every so often, there are certain white folk who will remind us that whether it's you, me, Johnny down the street, Miss Mary across the way, you're nothing but another.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I got you.
And,
go ahead.
And Omarosa found out on Tuesday she was just another.
Well, you know, it's funny. The thing that happened, funny in a strange way, in terms of what happened. She says she resigned. The president supposedly wished her well. But all these rumors ran about how she actually did leave. And she said that she saw some things that gave her great concern, that at some point, I guess after January 20th, in terms of her leaving, she said that she would go ahead and tell what was going on.
She said she got a story.
She got a story to tell. She said she was the only black in the room, the only black female in the room, and that as that proverbial fly on the wall,
Oh, yeah.
she was going to go ahead and tell it. So we'll see what happens.
Why do we always discover that we have a story when we've been booted out the door?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the thing here is that she went to the National Black Journalists Association. There was a big brouhaha revolving around that in terms of advocating for the African American community. She also brought a nice little photo op for the president with all the presidents of the HBCUs,
Mm-hmm.
told them they was going to get all this money, and not a dime came to these HBCUs. So people were concerned about, well, just what is your impact upon this presidency or this president as far as going ahead and addressing some of the concerns of the African American community, because that supposedly is your job.
That's what you and he say.
That's what they said. But when you start looking at what has transpired, especially as it relates to the budget and what we just mentioned as far as the HBCUs are concerned, those are promises that have not been kept.
Well, we were only hoping for the best.
Yes.
We knew what the history was.
Oh, no question.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Alabama.
Yes.
You know, the Black Belt,
Yes.
the Selma,
Mm-hmm.
Montgomery,
Look,
Birmingham,
beautiful.
the seat of the civil rights movement.
Exactly. And we have to give a shout out to those brothers and sisters there who came out to vote.
Yes.
You know, the funny thing to me about that whole election, funny in a strange way again, is the fact that people talk about how, and it did have an impact, there's no question about it, in terms of the charges, the accusations that were made against Roy Moore, okay? But what hasn't been really talked about was the fact that Roy Moore said some things that really got African Americans agitated as it relates to saying that America was great. The era when America was great was when it had slavery. Okay? I can't fathom anybody making a statement like that. And it seems to me that you had, yes, a number of high-profile people came down. And all due respect to those people, like Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker, and Charles Barkley, and Terry Sewell, who is actually the female African-American Congresswoman
from that area.
From that area. They all pitched in and did a wonderful job. But the people on the ground,
Oh, yeah.
they were the ones who said, we're not going to tolerate this.
Everybody knows the names of the major organizations.
Mm-hmm.
The NAACP,
Yes.
the oldest and baddest civil rights organization in America.
Yes.
The Urban League.
Mm-hmm.
But let's look at our list, Dr. Miller.
Yes, we had such great organizations, young millennials involved in all this. DeWanna Thompson, who was the creator of the Woke Voter Program, she organized the HBCUs in Alabama as it relates to getting out to vote that day.
Stay woke.
Stay woke. Rose Sanders, the coordinator for Vote or Die campaign. Selma, they had over 75% turnout in that county. Unheard of in a special election. That's the historic part of it too, okay? The fact that this wasn't a presidential election.
No.
Okay? This wasn't a midterm election. This is a special election right in between two holidays, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, where more people came out in the African American community in this election than they did in 2016 and voted for Barack Obama.
Let's talk about this just a minute. Okay. We had these small groups of people
Yes.
all over Alabama,
Yes.
in addition to the big ones, doing what they do.
Exactly. Getting people out to vote.
But let's talk about who actually voted. Who, now, you talked a little bit about the millennials and every day Bob and John and Mary and Annie.
Going to the barber shop and the beauty salon.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of the beauty salon, but here we go again.
Yes.
They just come out of the sisters in Virginia, and they are special.
No question.
They are special.
Yes.
96% of black females voted for Doug Jones.
Yes. Tremendous. Tremendous.
How do you get past that?
You can't get past that. You know what that signifies to me? The same thing Aretha Franklin used to sing about. RESPECT. Find out what it means to me.
All right.
Okay? Give me my respect. Okay? And these African American women were out there getting people to go to the polls to vote.
Yeah.
Okay?
And they stood in line.
Yes. No question.
And it's interesting when you see your little castle start crumbling, and former Judge Moore, who had to be taken out and seated several times because he refused to obey federal law.
Exactly.
When he was a judge. And he wants to go back to slavery. He did.
It was great back then, as far as families were concerned. Forget our families. Our families were dissipated all over the South and the United States, but be that as it may.
And, you know, my wife says he came up riding his horse,
Yes.
you know, and the only thing he didn't have was the whip. Here come Master on the horse.
I'm telling you, you know, it was funny. You know, the Daily News had a headline about the fact that take you and your horse that you rode in on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
On out of here. Yeah, it was amazing in terms of how much, in terms of the amount of African Americans that came out that day to vote, whereas before, now think about this, the John Merrill, who is the Secretary of State for the state of Alabama, thought that the estimation as far as the total vote that would be coming out would be about 25%.
Yes.
Well, 40% actually came out. And the large majority of that came from out of that black belt in Alabama, a ruby red state. Now, yes, you talk about who voted, okay? And I think this is where we have to have some concern, okay? And that is, when it came down to white males, they voted for Roy Moore. When it came down to white females, those who were college educated, the majority of them voted for Doug Jones. Non-college educated white women voted for
Roy Moore.
The thing here is that how do you go ahead and pull the lever for somebody who has these kind of accusations of being a pedophile, who's running for office, and you still go ahead and vote for that individual? So what's the work going forward? The work going forward, because think about it, they not only pulled the lever for this guy, Roy Moore, they pulled the lever for the President of the United States right now.
Well, let's talk about the President of the United States right now. He has a big black eye. Now, why does he have a black eye?
Yes.
Initially, with this special election, he supported Luther
Strange.
Strange that he would support Luther Strange, and lost.
Exactly.
Then he gets another bite at the apple. And he supports Roy Moore and lost.
Exactly.
So the reason I say he gets a big black eye, because what it says is, Mr. President, you are losing what you thought you had. You may be all of those things, and they talk about the Republican Party now is the party of Trump. But when it mattered most, he couldn't get the people to follow him.
Exactly. And think about this, 48%, not even a majority, in Alabama, as I said, Ruby Red, Alabama, they do not approve of the job that he's doing. Okay? The other part of it is, we talk about him, his confidant, his guru, Steve Bannon, went down there 3 times to get Roy Moore over the finish line, convinced this president to go ahead and endorse Roy Moore, okay? Made a robocall for Roy Moore. So his fingerprints were all over this election as far as Roy Moore is concerned.
And brought the people's airplane, Air Force One, down to Pensacola, Florida, which is 30 miles from the state of Alabama.
Yes.
Same TV market.
Same TV market. Mobile, Alabama, Birmingham.
And then what he said during his rally, his people's rally,
Yes.
he asked, how many people here from Alabama? And the great majority yelled out that they're from Alabama. So who is he fooling?
Exactly. His name was on the line when it came down to that election, and it was rejected. That ought to give grave concern to these people who are thinking now of terms of going ahead and voting for this tax cut that they've been talking about and adding a deficit, more of a deficit to what we already have. The thing here is that Donald Trump put his fingerprints all over this, and at the same time, President Obama made robocalls, okay, to the constituency there. And guess who won in this head-to-head clash?
Now, see, you know what you've done? Now, Trump's going to have to go get his people and make some charts to show that I had many more people respond to my robocall than Obama.
Oh, God.
Because he always compares everything that he does to Obama.
Yes.
And there is no comparison.
There is no comparison. There is no comparison. And the thing here is about this guy talking about Trump. Every time you mention Obama's name, he flies off the handle. He can't handle the fact that President Obama is well respected and thought of as one of the top presidents we've ever had, while he is in the 30s. 32% of the people, as far as his job is concerned, across the country, say that he's doing a good job. That's terrible.
Yeah. Peter King.
Representative.
You know, he looked at Breitbart 1.
Right. Mr. Bannon.
And you said Mr. Bannon made 3 trips to Alabama to try to drag Moore across the finish line.
Yes.
You said he looked like a disheveled drunk, the way he dressed, who's been out all night having a drunk.
Isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
I mean, come on now, that's just terrible. I mean, here it is, and this person is senior aide to the president. He was during the campaign. He was his campaign, if not manager, his campaign leader, chief advisor. You know, and he's being talked about this way. You know, it's a joke, really. I mean, in terms of you look at this presidency, and we haven't even hit the 1-year mark yet, and all these different things are coming out about people's opinion as far as this individual is concerned, and you know, we're spinning our wheels. You know, we're trying to, every day there's some sort of calamity that takes place in this country revolving around what this, think about what he said about Senator Christian Gillibrand. I have never heard a newspaper, right, USA Today, say some of the things that they said about him in response to what Trump had to say about Senator Christian Gillibrand.
Well, they said he was straight out unfit for office.
Yes. But I mean, they really lambasted him, talking about he's not even fit to clean the urinals in the Obama presidential library, that he's not fit to even shine the shoes of President George Bush. Now, I've never seen a publication go ahead and say that about a sitting president.
Well, if he would just sit and listen and learn,
yes,
you wouldn't hear it now.
Right.
But when you stay up all night and when you
watching television,
you watch the cable stations till they all go off.
Right.
Get up in the morning and first thing and start tweeting.
Yes.
And when your main menu, with all you could have, when you get ready to go on Air Force One, you have to go out and get a half a dozen warm Big Macs and a half a dozen Diet Cokes. Now, what are you drinking a Diet Coke for when you're drinking a big
like an oxymoron.
Oh, my God.
But you know, the thing about it, what he had to say and his problem with women, you know? I mean, here it is. He says what he says about Christian Gillibrand, that she begged him for money, and then she said she would do anything for a contribution from him, okay? He had nasty things to say about Megyn Kelly when he was in terms of the campaign. He had nasty things to say about Carly Fiorina in terms of her face. I mean,
how ugly she was.
How ugly she was. I mean, you know, you got to stop and think what's going on in this man's mind to be saying some things like this. And people hoped that, okay, that was the campaign, that he's going to turn presidential when he takes, you know, walks through the portico of the White House and what have you. He's going to be presidential and speak like a president. But this man has done just the opposite.
Well, Dr. Miller, I'll tell you what I'd like to do. Let us take a week off to enjoy this latest victory.
And a victory it was.
We sang over and over during the movement in Alabama, we shall overcome.
We shall overcome.
But this past Tuesday, we overcame.
No question. Big time.
Thanks again for coming by, and as always, have a great day, Suncoast.